All right, class. First off, as always, good day. I'm glad you're here. So, this video is going to be basically about the end of the Civil War. Okay. Now, thing is, as one student mentioned to me before class started, they go, this thing went by pretty quick. It's like, yeah, because again, I didn't go over a lot of battles because you guys have your project that you need to get done. So, if you're watching this video, because you missed a day or whatever, and you don't have the project picture or the project papers, um, you need to go see me really quick. I usually typically be asking everyone, hey, do you have the project paper, things like that. But if you're one of the few people who it just probably slipped my mind, um, you should really either ask me, or if you have somebody in class, you have their number, they probably have it because again, I let you guys take it home. So ask for pictures and some of that. And again, pick one of the three options. You could write down the notes on a regular piece of paper or stuff, turn that in. It's just as good. Okay. But again, you will have one of the three options. You do need to get that done by January 6th or December 6th or December 7th, depending on if you're on a Monday, Wednesday, or Tuesday, Thursday. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with this lesson. So we're going to analyze the Gettysburg Address. We're going to examine the importance of the Gettysburg Address, and let's go ahead and get to your warm-up picture. Now, here is your warm-up picture. It actually came out a lot better on your guys' paper than it did on here. For some reason, it came out really blurry. But the question is, what is this artist trying to say about Lincoln and slavery? Now, some students in class were kind of asking about that guy in the tree there. Like, who is he? What's his importance? Basically, that's a Southerner, one of those guys who wanted slavery. So if you look, he's really like holding on to that branch, with for like dear life. Because again, you have to remember those guys relied on slavery. So on the bottom part, it says Lincoln's last warning. He goes, now, if you don't come down, I'll chop the tree from under you. Okay. So that's what he says at the bottom there. So my question to you again is, what is this artist trying to say about Lincoln and slavery? So look at what Lincoln, how he is, look what he has with him, and what is represented by slavery, and come up with you know uh, explanation. What is this artist trying to say? Okay, so think about it. Pause the video. Write your response because we're moving on in three, two, one. So we're going to talk about the Gettysburg Address first. One of the most famous myths about the Gettysburg Address is that Lincoln wrote the speech on the way to Gettysburg. Like he's in a carriage and he's writing the speech as he's going on. No, that's not true. What is true is that while Lincoln was in the carriage going to Gettysburg, he was looking at his speech and goes, you know what? Let me cross this off. Let me put some fixes here. Let's change this word. Let's add this. Let's take away that. So he was editing his speech, but he didn't write it on the way to Gettysburg. Okay, he was editing it, but he didn't write it on the way over. Now, of all of Lincoln's speeches that he gave, the Gettysburg Address is his shortest. It was, I mean, just a couple minutes that he gave the speech. Um, it was so quick that people who were coming to hear it, the people in the far back, by the time they got close, the people in the front were already leaving, and they're like, "What's going on? What happened?" They're like, "He's done," and they're like, "What? He's done?" They're like, "Yeah, he's done. Speech is over." You know. So if you look at this picture here, you can see Lincoln, and like a student mentioned in class, why does it look so blurry, so fuzzy? Because you have to remember, photography back then, you had to take the picture and people had to stand still for the picture to come crisp and clean. But if people are moving and you put the close the shutter real quick, it's going to come out blurry. And that's exactly what happened. This photographer basically had to get a picture of Lincoln because his speech, I mean, the guy was barely setting up, and Lincoln's speech is already over. He's like, "Oh, dang it!" So he has to take a picture really quick. So again, if you can spot Lincoln, awesome. If you can't, he doesn't have his hat on. Okay. Um. So yeah. So besides it being his shortest, it's been. I mean, people who love Lincoln, like myself, um, people who are like speech writers and historians and people who just who read you know speeches and things like that, they say time and time again, this is by far his greatest speech ever written and given. It's amazing. So here's a speech right here. Again, you don't have to write anything down, but I just like for you to listen to these words. Okay. It says, 7 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation conceived in liberty, and to dedicate to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation or any nation so conceived and so dedicated can long endure. We are met on a great battlefield of that war. We have come to dedicate a portion of that field as a final resting place for those who here gave their lives that that nation might live. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do this. But in a larger sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hollow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, who struggled here have consecrated it, far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from these honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. That we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. All right, so March 1865, General Philip Sheridan overruns General Lee and blocks his retreat. Lee is trying to escape, but he's blocked. Okay. The Union captures 6,000 Confederate soldiers at Sailor's Creek. Okay. Now, on April 9th, Confederate Major General John B. Jordan tried to do a last minute offensive attack against the Union. And the thing is, he was successful. He was able to kind of attack the line and things like that. But the Union had way too many men. So it's like, yeah, they were able to create a hole, but when they created that hole, the Union was able to surround them again. So yeah, it was bad. Um, so later in the morning, General Lee, as you can see from this picture, is overwatching everything, and he's realizing, you know, we need these supplies to be coming in, and that supplies and support that was supposed to be coming to him to help him out got cut off. Okay, now what was in these provisions and stuff? Food, fresh water, equipment, bullets, gunpowder, guns, things like that. So now that he has basically nothing, his men are basically out of bullets. They're out of basically cannonballs. There's Union soldiers surrounding them. They're outnumbered. In chess, this is called a checkmate. He has nowhere to go. He has no moves. His men are starving, you know. So Lee basically tells his lower general men, he goes, guys, there is nothing left for me to do but to go see General Grant. And I would rather die 1,000 deaths. He does not want to surrender to Grant, but the thing is, he has to. Remember, Lee was seen as the top soldier our country has ever created. He was seen as the ultimate general, the ultimate warrior, the ultimate soldier. And here he is losing to a general who barely graduated West Point. You know, a guy who, again, it's like basically I said in class. Imagine you losing a basketball game to a 7-year-old. Now in class, I had some students go like, they chuckled and things like that. I'm like, yeah, exactly. You would be like, that's ridiculous. That would never happen. That's what everyone thought about Lee going against Grant. There's no way Grant could win. Lee is too up here. He's at this level. Grant is like down here at best, you know, but he did. So Lee is, he's like, oh God, I don't want to do this. I don't like this guy. Oh, I have to surrender. He's thinking about his men. Okay. So he finally sends word to Grant saying, I don't want to, but I'm ready to surrender. All right. Tell me where. So Lee and Grant meet at the front parlor of the Appomattox Courthouse, which is owned, strangely enough, by this man named Willer McLean. Now, if you remember from the beginning parts of the Civil War, at the Battle of First Bull Run, the lesson where I told you guys how a cannonball shot through the guy's house and stuff like that, the guy who owned that house, that was Wilmer McLean. So the first like major battle of the Civil War, and basically the last major battle of the Civil War, it happened at his property. Basically, the war began and ended on his property. It's a weird twist in fate how that happened. Okay, now if this doesn't demonstrate the two differences of Lee and Grant, nothing else will. So Lee shows up to surrender. He has his hat, right, with a feather in it. He got the sash. He got his sword. He's dressed to perfection. His collars are button polished and he's looking regal. He's looking amazing, right? Perfection. Grant, on the other hand, comes in with his clothes that he was out in the field with. He has mud all over his boots and his pants and things like that. Um, he comes in with a cigar in his mouth. So yeah, that was Grant, and that again that shows the distinction, the difference between the two men. You know, now here's the thing: before they get down to it, Grant and Lee actually have a little conversation. They're like, "You remember back in the Mexican American War, we had a little chit chat, things like that." And Lee's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I was a scout. You were a soldier. Yeah, yeah, yeah. When we attacked Mexico City. Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember that was a while ago, huh? Yeah, this and that." So they basically reminisce about the time during the Mexican American War. And I told you guys during that lesson to keep that in the back of your mind that these two future Civil War generals would talk about it later. And that's at this point. Um, so when it comes to terms of surrender, Grant says, okay, so here's what I'm offering. All your men and officers will be pardoned, okay? They won't be arrested. They can go home and things like that. But anything that is property of the South belongs to us. Okay, so if they got a gun issued by the southern states, they have to give that up. They got a sword, a sidearm, whatever, that comes to us. A horse, that comes to us. But if they have their own gun, like that was their gun they came with, that was their own personal gun, they can keep it. Okay. And if the horse they're riding on is their horse that they brought from home and some of that, they can keep that. Okay. It's anything that's not their property, then we get. And on top of that, only your officers, the captains and lieutenants and some of that, they can keep their side arms, you know. And I tell you what, your men are starving. Okay, we'll feed them. Those are my terms of surrender. Do you accept? So Lee's like, yeah, that's actually pretty fair. All right, where do I sign? So they bring out the paperwork, and by mid afternoon, Lee signs the document saying he surrenders on April 9th, 1865. Now, here's the thing, the Civil War is not officially over yet. But this, it's basically practically over. It's like everyone knows this is everything's going to go downhill for now. Go quick, fast, and hurry to end. Okay. There are going to be pockets of resistance. There's going to be some people who are like, no, no, we can keep fighting and things like that. But it's going to be like militias, which are not going to have the same firepower as the military. So yeah, the war is basically over. All right, so back again, the Civil War was all about slavery, and this issue tore our country in two. So if you've been paying attention, you can see how it really tore our country, where people were fighting one each other about whether slavery was, we should keep it or get rid of it. Now, here's my question to you. What is a current issue you feel that has the ability to do that very same thing like slavery did? Split our country in two. So think about politics. Think about these people, these Karens, who tell people, "Oh, you should live your life like this. You shouldn't live your life like that. You know, you should be doing this and that." You know, people like that. So think about lifestyles, politics, you know, things like that. What is an issue that you think could split our country into two, where we might have, we might not go toe to toe civil war, busting out the guns and some of that, but pretty darn close. Is there what issue do you think that might happen? That might cause that separation of our country. Okay. Um. So once you've answered this question, you're done. Okay. So, um, good job, guys. I'm glad you again that you got that done. Now here's the thing, though. If again you did not get the research project where you pick a battle from the Civil War, and again, make sure it's a Civil War, not the American Revolution, not World War One, not World War Two, Korea, Vietnam, things like that. Civil War battles, okay? Because if it's any of those other battles or any other war, it's not going to count. And again, like a student told me today, just today, well, I already did all the work, but you did it wrong. Did you even think, wow, geez, this is about World War II. Why am I doing this when it's talking about the Nazis and things like that? We're not talking about Nazis. Why didn't you think about that? And you want me to give you credit for that? So, again, think about that kind of stuff, okay? So if it doesn't look familiar, like you don't see anything about the North and the South, it's talking about like the Germans and Russians and things like that, then you should be like, wait, it's not what we're talking about in class. Okay, so giving you guys fair warning on this. Okay. Um, so with that being said, guys, if you did not get that paper from me, um, which again, I typically been asking everyone, but if you didn't, see if you can get somebody in the classroom that you know can text you the pictures, and then like online piece of paper, take your notes and stuff like that. You can get PowerPoint, like this thing I've been showing you guys on here on this video. That's PowerPoint. You can get that on your phone. It's a free app. Okay. And yeah. All right. So with that being said, guys, you take care, you be safe, and I'll see you guys later. Okay.